Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Beth Gelman. How are you, Beth? How are you this evening?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm not too bad. It's a little cool here this evening. Actually had to turn on some heat
Oh, where are you at?
in Ohio.
Oh, I'm right next door in Michigan.
Oh, hello,
Yeah.
Michigan. So let's start this right off. I've been doing some research, like I love to do on my guests. I love to like dig a little deep in some interviews, and I see that you've had some. So I'm like, yeah, baby. So I've read that as a creative person, you have learned to re-innovate yourself. Can you care to explain that?
Yes, I think I'm on my 12th iteration. Um, I You know, it's very interesting because when you ask an author where they get their inspiration, quite often if you're talking fiction anyway, you were looking back at our lives and pulling out all the bits and pieces, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and incorporating it in some way into our writing. So my first book, The Perfect Voice, is exactly that. There's so much of me in that book because I have a degree in piano and voice. I went to Central Michigan University and started off as a piano major, and then realized that my personality was not such that you could like trap me in a practice room for hours and hours on end. And
Mm,
so I said, there has got to be something else that I could do. And I've always been very business oriented. I have, at that point, had already had a lot of clerical admin experience. And so I kind of pivoted. I joined a business fraternity and I got involved in management and some marketing pieces. And then there's the dreaded statistics and accounting. And then I said,
mm.
I'm a creative, I'm not a number person. Okay, it's year 4 in college. How am I getting out of here? So I got a little help from a guidance counselor, and I turned to communication. So that really was my calling at the time, organizational communication. So I have degrees in all those things that I just discussed. I think I hit the record of number of credits needed to graduate. Um, but like many people that you've spoken to, these are all pieces of our tapestry that allow us to become who we truly are and want to be. And
Mm.
so there were many years of berating myself and getting sideways glances. I still get sideways glances from people who have known me for long periods of time, going, "Well, what are you doing now?"
Mm.
Like, well, don't say it like that. You've been doing one thing your whole life.
The
So
one thing I the one thing I think that we're great at as writers, though, I mean, not maybe, excuse me, not for maybe the people who actually know us, but I know when I talk to someone about the stuff that I do, someone who doesn't know me, my day in, day out life,
sure.
when I tell people what I do, they're like, "Oh, wow, wow," you know what I mean?
Fascinating.
And I'm like, "Yeah, on paper it sounds awesome,
That's right. Show
but
me
keep
the
in
money.
mind." Yeah, but keep in mind, on paper, I write that crap.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. But I
So,
have to tell you though, finding my voice in writing has been an absolute godsend. I mean,
mm,
I I have learned recently, the last 5 years or so, nobody really wants to hear me talk anymore. I'm just tired of talking to people that don't ever want to, have um what did I call it the other day? Discourse, they want to
mm.
have, you know, we'll call it, oh, what do you call it? Of course, a lady with words doesn't have this word. Um,
You're
but
you're welcome. You're on the right podcast because I'm like that all the time.
we'll call it, for the sake of things, gentle discourse. And as soon as I hang up today, I'll remember the word. But, to be able to share ideas and not have anybody, flip out these days is very difficult. And so when I write, I can do that. I can say what's on my mind. And of course, I can package it in a way that my characters would say it, which is really a challenge sometimes because, if I'm writing about Abigail, who's a 24-year-old neurodivergent girl with, ADHD and anxiety
Hmm.
versus Ruby, who went to college. She's refined. She has, she's becomes a sexy voiceover artist and she's working in business. These are two different sides of, the spectrum. I mean, one's 24, one's 30, 27. They have a little bit of different experience, and the words you choose have to match not only their age, they also have to be appropriate to their education and to the region that they live in. And um, it's very important because it pulls the reader out of the story when they're going, she would never use that $3 word. That's
Hmm.
ridiculous. But Ruby would. So
Right.
that's really important when you're writing to
Oh
choose words that
yeah. Right.
characterize.
I love writing as well. And I don't think that people grasp it unless you do it, how
Oh,
fulfilling it can be. When
completely.
you just, yeah, when you talk to people who have, oh, I don't know, like just a typical regular job, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't think they truly understand everything
not a
that
clue.
goes into it.
Not a clue.
And that, because like,
And they don't
for the
ask you
longest,
either.
no, no, for the longest time, I mean, my family, when my father got ill, they were like, oh, well, Eri can do it. She's at home. She doesn't have a job.
Hello.
And
Oh my God, I
yeah,
hate that.
yeah, because I work from home and I make my own schedule. And, and mine is not the main income. So obviously I am not, you know what I mean? What I do
I do
isn't
know what you
as,
mean. I,
yeah.
I do. But I just told my son today, I have never worked so hard in my life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
you're you're
And
you're sleeping it, you're eating it, you're dreaming it, you're
yes,
you're doing
yes.
it, and you're not
And,
just writing. You're doing all the
hmm,
business stuff and the marketing and the
yes.
publicity and all the other stuff that goes with it. And yeah, your friends are like, well, let's chat. I'm like, no, gotta go.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, you're editing again. I'm like, what am I editing
Yeah.
again?
Hmm. And it's also, if you think about it, it is the most profession that we get the most criticism. I
Absolutely.
mean I mean, I stopped
Absolutely.
reading reviews in the very beginning. I'm very different, so and I will own that up. I used to call myself the unorthodox author. So,
I love it.
because my thank you. It's on my book covers. It actually is on my book covers.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh, that's so
basically
fun.
have a bio in the inside, basically letting you know this may not be the book for you because I'm just different.
It's a
And I
warning
do.
label.
Yeah, it's a warning label. It's my it's yeah, Laura says she can confirm that. It's my warning label.
I
And
love that.
but I but when I was really pushing it, I mean, I could drop what? 700 books in a month. And
Wow.
oh, thanks. But that's a lot of free ones too. But that you know how that it works on Amazon. It increases your ratings up and down, even if they're free books. It
Yep.
goes through the Kindle and all that.
Sure, sure.
KDP.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is
Yeah.
when I was doing it, it also takes a lot of income and time.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh. So
it
much.
does. And people don't, yeah, they, no one understands that. If you have an editor, if you have a cover copy, I started doing basically all mine myself because I couldn't afford and publishing
Agreed.
up to, yeah, I have over 15 books now. And
Amazing.
oh, thank you. Don't get too
It's
hype on me. You haven't read me yet.
It doesn't matter. The fact that you put all that effort and all that time into it, I appreciate the time. So
Yeah.
you will
Well,
take your
I've
compliment.
had. All right, it's mine.
That's right.
But it is a lot of work, and you
Yeah,
take a lot of criticism. The biggest thing for me is that I tell people that mine is an artistic endeavor.
absolutely.
I'm not the most. I know that I will make typographical errors because it's just in my nature. It is who I am,
Hmm.
and even though I have some college behind me, I did not graduate, but I do have some.
Listen,
um,
you don't need you
every
don't need a college degree to edit if you know anything about grammar,
No,
right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and well, my grammar's on a on a
That's
grade
what
on a
that's what
grading
Grammarly's
level.
for.
Yeah, right. Well, I edit, but I even noticed I put something on up on Vela last night, and it's supposed to be she, so I've got to go back and tick that off because I was like, ah, crap.
I
Now I
know, right?
gotta wait to.
It's
Now I gotta
absolutely
go back
perfect till
in.
I read it again.
Yeah, yes, and I read it
My
and
God.
read it. I even have the computer read it back to me as I edit along, and I still missed it. And I'm like, ah, crap. So I've
Oh
got to
my
go back
gosh.
and do that.
I
But
know.
anyways, but
Well,
yeah, I totally get yourself, and you totally grow as you're going with it. So that really explains itself how you're reinventing yourself.
thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
so so tell me this. I'm gonna say a phrase to you, and you tell me what it means to you, okay?
Okay.
And then we'll elaborate for our listeners.
You got it.
Tell me about the perfect lesson to the
Oh,
book making perfect sense.
oh, okay. So I so let me put it to you this way. When I started writing the book, I
Hmm.
didn't intend for it to have a cliffhanger. But when you get to
Ah.
98,000 words and there's so much more to tell, you have
Hmm.
to write another book of another
Mm.
103,000 words. So, you got to make these decisions. But as far as the storyline goes, I love writing books about like marginalized people.
Mhm.
And I love women's empowerment and curvy
Oh,
girls are all a
yes.
thing, but I just kind of fell in love with the idea of Trudy, who's good friends with Ruby from the Perfect Voice. She's a feisty Latina, and she's a seventh
Mm.
grade English teacher, and she's got daddy issues, but not the kind some people think. It is an emotional daddy issue problem. And in the process of trying to come up with the kind of job her father had that created the problem, I didn't want it to be, the typical, a typical type of a job. So I did a little research, and her father in the story is a catastrophic insurance agent. Okay, you don't hear that every day. So I thought that was
Mm-mm.
interesting. And what was with the way the environment is nowadays, it's more and more. But these agents are called at the last minute to go out and evaluate storms like Milton or Helene or Katrina,
Mm.
which Katrina was in her story. And he would come back angrier and angrier because he was so frustrated with having to be gone for so long and the climate and everything that it really was pulling the whole family apart. And he was starting to get verbally abusive and then even attempted getting physically abusive before the mother just said, enough, we're done with this. So
Mm.
she promised herself after college that she would go and get therapy. And she did that. And then she goes to these summer psychology conferences all over the United States. And this one happens to be in San Francisco. And the keynote speaker, who she's like been drooling over for years, wanting to hear him speak, she ends up kind of hitting the lottery and being able to see three of his lectures. But they have a chance meeting right before the conference begins in the lobby of the hotel. And he wasn't looking, she wasn't looking. She may have bumped into him, he may have bumped into her. His phone was broken, words were exchanged, and the tension begins. And
Mm.
so, yeah. So once she's in the classroom with him, and when I say classroom, it's like, when you go to those hotel conventions, that's like in
Yeah.
a room.
Hmm.
And he would say something. This is Dr. Alexander Pierce, the foremost authority on childhood psychology and trauma. So this is like, this is the icing on the cake for her. She's got to get this right. Except for he says stuff, and she's like, and and because she's a feisty Latina, she opens her mouth and he's like, who the hell is this girl? And so again, we have more kind of a close proximity, enemies to lovers kind of a thing. And the conference ensues and everything. And then there again may or may not be something that happened after the conference, but let's just fast forward to her back at school. And now she has all this great new information she wants to help her kids with. But I don't know if you have kids, but at the end of the school year, they have field days for the kids. So in
Mhm.
my story, they have a field day for the teachers to kind of get back in the groove and bond and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so she gets tapped on the shoulder by her principal, and he says, uh, the principal, she says to her that you're going to be the teacher liaison to the consultant that the school board hired to bring the school up to an exemplary level. And so
Mhm.
goes her year of coasting through seventh grade. So when the consultant shows up, it's not exactly who she thought it, or who it might be. And of course, it's someone who she knows. And so
Mhm.
there is all of this, there is all of this tension and so on. And what I love about this, I mean, of course, you write. So you sit there laughing, and then I make myself cry, and
Mm.
it's like, oh my gosh, that's a great line,
Yes.
or whatever. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of tension in the scenes, and then of course there's a lot of comedy in there to kind of break up these, heavier topics. But you
Mhm.
learn about who Trudy's, who her mother is, who her father is, who her brothers are. You get to go in and have dinner with them at Thanksgiving and at Christmas, and really kind of understand all of it. And then we have the doctor, who is an East Coast um, elite type family with parents that only, travel in very elite social circumstances. They have dignitaries all the time, and the parents are constantly pulling him. We have an age gap in here, by the way. He's 42, and he still can't get a handle on drawing up boundaries with
Mm.
the parents. And one
Mhm.
of the very best reviews I got on this book, this woman wrote, it was Marine Patriot Wife, I think was her name. I wish I could find her. I wanted to send her flowers. She is a psychologist, and she
Ah.
was breaking down the story and just praising this and that and the other thing. And then she says the most interesting thing. You would think that this woman, this teacher who goes to all these conferences and has all this experience would know better. And here we have the maven, the guy who should know, who's the number one person in the country. He should know how to draw a boundary in his life, right?
Mhm.
And then she says, but then again, we're all human, and we all have our baggage. And that
Mm.
really is why the perfect lessons came to be. Is we are not only learning here we go back to the reiterations, right? We're
Mhm.
constantly growing and changing, and if we are not growing and changing, then we kind of get stuck in the mire. So the perfect lessons is the perfect chance for Trudy to evolve, and on a daily day by day basis with the doctor and so on, and the families, and this is all very woven together. But the piece that I didn't mention is because there is a story here, and this is what I think most people who don't read romance don't understand nowadays. There's a real story, right?
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So you can take all of the sexy schmexy stuff out of there, and you still have a very rich story with characters and world that really makes sense. It just so happens, though, that Trudy had been dating this guy at the beginning of the book named Sam, who is kind of, uh, we'll call him white bread in the bed. And after 6 years of all of this safe stuff, she wants a challenge, and Sam ends up leaving town, and he asks her to go with him, and she says, "Nah, I'm good." And then she ends up, in this relationship, and because there's this age gap, and he is of alpha kind of guy, the Dr. Pierce. Yeah, he's teaching her lessons both in and out of the bedroom. And let me just say, spicy. Ha ha. Hot. Whew. Yeah.
Now,
So, yes,
now for everyone who's listening, this is from, let me make sure I get this right. This is from we're talking about what the books from the Perfect series.
correct.
And we have you have the perfect lesson. You
Yes.
have now probably not do these in order,
There's the
and then
perfect
you have
voice. Yeah. And then the
okay,
lessons.
yep, yep, and then perfect sense.
Making perfect sense.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it concludes. I got to the point of the perfect lessons where everything was laid out and nothing was resolved. And I
Hmm.
have a kind of a bugaboo about leaving my readers saying something and then not tying it up.
Yeah.
You know, it every things need closure. And it kind of, this is again why it's my bugaboo, is that many authors will throw information into the story that is completely irrelevant, which is fine, but they never tie it back to the story of why it's there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. I think well, I get what you're saying. I when I write though, I love it when people tie it together, but I like it done in a way that it's not that big law. You know what I mean? Where they have to write this huge
No,
backstory
no,
for
no,
the
no, no, no.
character.
It can be a couple
Yeah.
sentences or a paragraph and just,
Yes.
make it clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like it when you bring it up as like in context of what's going. Like they'll have a memory back lapse, or they'll remember something that happened, or do you know what I
Yes.
mean? Where you
Yes.
make it happen within the current
Yes.
story, so you don't have
Well,
chapters.
that's a beautiful technique. That
Hmm.
is always a good technique. My cousin who I'm not dropping names, but he used to work for the New York Times in the
Hmm.
vows section. So he told me all sorts of stories. But when I was getting started in this career, he said something that really, he said several things that stuck with me. This one most importantly, that when you go back in time, it like a flashback or you're he says there has to be a reason. You have to be collecting something or a piece of information or a circumstance to justify having gone back.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
said, "Oh wow, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I'll take that."
I can see that.
Yeah.
I like stories that are women empowering. Um,
Yay.
and in our
Yay.
current, without getting political,
That's okay. That's okay.
in our current setting,
I
so
can
that probably
feel you. I can feel you.
I voted, early voted, baby. I did it
Atta
yesterday.
girl. Atta
Yeah,
girl.
and just from telling you that I'm an all about women empowerment, that probably tells you where I voted.
I'm with you every step of the way.
All right, I knew I liked you.
Mhm. That's right.
Oh, it's very hard.
Yeah.
The whole,
Yeah.
not to make this a big, this is about you and your books.
Yeah.
But it's very hard this day and age. I block, delete. You know what I mean? Because you can't even make a statement nowadays without being, called out for it. And
Right. Right.
it's just this isn't like any other normal election. It's
No.
just not. And
No.
whatever side you are on, I'll give you that much credit for whatever side someone's on.
Yeah.
The stakes are extremely too high for me to
We're
be, "Oh,
all,
okay,
yes.
yeah,"
Yes.
to be too, "Oh, okay, I understand your part," or you no. In any If you were talking about
Mm-mm.
any little thing like it normally was, like let's say like in the time of Jimmy Carter and Bush, yes,
Oh yeah.
I could see where we could have a conversation and debate the issues. But
Absolutely.
this election, it's too personable for me. You know what I
There's a
mean?
lot of hot buttons.
Yeah. Mhm.
A lot of hot buttons. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
and as a woman, and again, like just said, I'm all about women empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought myself as being a feminist, but when it comes, I mean, and I guess I just in my situation, I've always
Uh-huh.
been empowered. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've
Right.
never stand second. And my
Right.
husband will tell you that. I'll be like, "What'd you say?"
That's right. Don't you dare
I've
say that again.
Yeah. Right. I've never been this
Time. I
meek
gotta go.
woman.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I've never been a meek woman. So for
No, neither have
me,
I.
yeah, so the women empowerment for me, you know what I mean? And I never really knew it was a big issue. I was
Well,
born in
that's because
1970.
Yeah,
Go
because
ahead.
you never grew up. I never grew
Yes.
up in an
Uh-huh.
era where we didn't have the ability to
Yes.
voice and protect
Yes.
our bodies. And so again,
Yes.
it's not a matter of politics for me.
Mhm.
It's not a matter of politics. It's a matter of human rights.
Yes. And if that's a very powerful word right there. We should come back and actually we'll have a politics
Let's
talk.
do that. Let's do that.
Yeah. Cuz I could go on, but you're going to get me down a rabbit hole.
I understand. I understand. But
uh,
it's not even just about women. I'm not going to go
no.
off on a major tangent
No.
here, but there are there are some fundamental changes and shifts
Yeah.
that will literally rock every person in this world if
Yeah, and if you don't
things
realize it now, you soon will if it goes the
oh
wrong way. And
oh
I'm
yeah,
guaranteeing it.
right, right.
And yeah.
I just want to be
It's
left alone to
very
do my thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I actually stood in I mean not like I said, not to carry this on too far, but I actually stood in front of the voting thing yesterday and I just looked at her name and like it was kind of like a pivotal moment for me.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
was like just looking at even when it comes back up and it lets you see everything that you voted for, and I'm like
Hmm. Right.
and I just looked at that and I was like, yes, yes. I just stood there. My husband was
Yep.
already done and out, and I'm still
Yes.
standing there looking at my thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But
Yeah.
anyways, I'm right there
Perfect.
with you, girlfriend. I am right there with you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we get this, we get this right back to you.
Eh,
um, so I've read that you enjoy the romance genre and you usually like that with a 3+ level. Tell me the draw that pulls you into
well,
that.
to look at me, to look at me, you would probably say I was a good girl. Don't let
Okay.
these, don't let this sweet face fool you. Um, and so, I could be very Freudian about some of this stuff. I could, pull from, past experiences. We all could. Um, but it's a safe place on a page in a tablet for you to explore different parts of you without having to physically commit to it.
Hmm.
That is so freeing to me. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
in the real world, well, first of all, I don't physically, sex in a shower. Sex in the
Yeah.
shower sounds, really, really fun until you get down to the realistic part of it,
Until you
right?
get to the technicalities of it. Yeah.
Right.
Water and sex is not a good
Yeah,
thing.
like my knees hurt, or you just dropped me, or those things, right?
Yeah. There's
Sex
just not
against the
enough
wall.
There's
You
not
can
enough
lift me?
lubrication in water. I can't get past that one. You
No,
might
like,
think that there is, but they're not, and that's
yeah,
as deep as I'm going to go with it.
yeah. And you're like, you know what? I don't. My husband cannot lift me off the floor and hold me up against a wall. I'm
No.
sorry. And my husband is phenomenal. I mean, when you stack up all of his attributes, you know, beyond the physicality, he is miles above so many men that I've met.
Oh yeah.
But he's a small man. I'm a small woman.
Mhm.
And so that works for us, except there are certain things that are never going to happen in my marriage.
Mm.
And there are lots of women who certain things are never going to happen in their marriage. And why look elsewhere when you can dive into a book?
Oh yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. My mistake has been that I've elaborated on a few fantasies, and it was like creating a monster.
Well, I'm not going to say that I haven't thought of writing a sideline of taboo under a different name.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I,
I I can't believe. I mean, some of my favorite authors, like Jade West. She's from Britain. She's filthy. I mean,
mm.
off the charts filthy. But sometimes. I just want to read some filth. And
Yeah.
other
I
times I'm like, you know what? I just want like, a Hallmark kind.
Yes, I get you. Um, I'm actually publishing a little bit of a Hallmark one on Vella right now, and
Nice. Nice.
there's only like 3 chapters, and I write it under a guy's name, but it's still under my name, if you
I
understand what
love
I'm
that.
saying. Okay.
That's phenomenal.
Um, but I do it under a guy name, but I do anyway. So, but it's still my name. It's still up
Sure.
there on Vella. You get the gist, okay?
Yes,
But
yes.
anyways, I have a couple written that way, and I'm revamping them and putting them back up. But
Nice.
thank you. But I'm listening to Sookie Stackhouse series. And
Oh,
well, I've got all the books. If I love your book, I've got it in paperback. I've got it in paper. I've got it on my Kindle, and I have it on my what's my
yeah.
other tablet called? I forget what the other one's called.
Audio, audible.
The Raku or
Oh, the
something like
rat.
that.
Yeah, the Raku.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have that one because
Awesome.
I have the one where you can write on it and stuff.
Ooh,
And oh, I know, I love that tablet.
fancy.
Eh, the Not so much now, they're all coming out with it. And then I love to have the audibles. I
Yeah,
tried to do the voice talent myself. I only have 2 out, but I'm working on that because I wanna polish it even more, but that's the other side story. But
sure,
I'm
sure.
noticing now that I'm going back and I'm listening to it, and there is some erotic tone in Sookie
Yeah,
Stackhouse, and I never realized it before because I always get wrapped up in the action,
sure.
and
Oh
now
no,
I'm
the
listening.
voice.
Yeah, and now I'm
Yeah.
listening to it in Audible, and I have Alexa doing it, and the whole house is reading, and I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't know if my dog
Shut
should
her
be
down.
listening to this.
Shut her down. Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I have a degree in music, piano and voice,
Mhm.
and a voice makes everything
Yes,
so much better. I mean,
it
in
does.
almost all my books, I make it a point to stop and point out what a deep resonance this man has in the voice, or
Mhm.
this, her voice is, like a bell, or just something about that. I just listened to I, I listened to some holiday services this past week, and the cantor was doing things with his voice that was unbelievable. But on
Mm,
the side, there's an octet of professional singers, and and I have to say it, he's because I could see him. He is this big, beautiful black man with a baritone that made Barry White sound like a soprano. And
mm,
he every time he hit that pedal tone on the bottom, I went, oh
mm.
my God. Could you just say 5 words for me, please?
Yeah,
Every hour, just say 5 words.
I
Yeah, so I
know.
get it, I get it, and it
Yeah,
makes a
well,
big difference,
yeah,
which is why I've
I
been
think
dragging my
there's
feet.
oh, I know. I feel you. I drag my feet a lot. I've got like 5 books not finished in front of me already, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to get them done. That's why I'm putting them out on Vella because it's just an easier format for me, and then they're
Sure.
gonna go from Vella right into Audibles.
For
So I'm
beautiful.
not even oh, thank you. I'm not even bothering with paperback anymore or trying to do Kindle.
Oh.
I'm
Well,
just
tell
going
me what
right
you
from
think about that because, I had hardcovers for my first 5 books, but now I'm like, "You know what? It's more money."
it
And who
is, and then you decide you wanna update your covers, okay? Say that your
Oh
cover
my
work
god, I
is
just did this.
yes, and
What a
then you're
nightmare.
stuck with all then you're stuck with all the surplus of old books. People are going to
Oh my
just
god.
die when I say this, but I had
Oh
a
my
bunch of
gosh.
books in the garage and I threw them out. I threw them away.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. Don't want don't judge me.
Donate
Um,
them.
well, okay, to give a little backstory so anyone who hasn't paid attention, well, Beth, you probably don't know, but my father passed away last year,
I'm
and
so very
my
sorry.
oh, well, thank you. And then my mother moved in. She has an apartment across the pool from my she shed.
Nice.
And then, well, thank you. And then this year, my sister passed
Oh my
just a few
gosh.
weeks. Yeah, just a few weeks ago.
So
And
traumatic.
so I know I've taken some
I
dents on stuff. So I have just had this desire to clean out the clutter.
Yes.
And I have just realized because I've had 2 great losses so close together and
Sure.
so many changes with my mother moving in and my husband and her right now. That's why I have 4 dogs in here. They're at her house, going through some more stuff because we still don't have her house sold.
Okay.
And so I have just realized that it just, if you haven't used it in a year, why am I keeping it? You know? And
Exactly.
so where it comes to the book covers, to backtrack this just kind of gives you a little bit of backstory about why I got rid
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
Um, it's everything is pretty much digital nowadays.
Right.
And if I were to get, like, let's say we had a calling on it and people really loved a series, because I do have a few books that are in series. Say that you really love the series. If I got calls from the readers, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal to take the book that's already published, because you can do that
Yeah.
through Vella. You can publish it in
Sure.
2 other platforms. And if I
Beautiful.
already have the book up on Vella and it's already in Audible, it wouldn't be that difficult to put it out either in paperback or Kindle or
Exactly.
whatever the format.
Right.
And the one thing that I like about it, I'll tell you what I like about it, since you
Tell me.
ask,
I
is the
did.
fact it's the easy. Hey, I like it when the podcast turns all about me now.
Go
anyways,
for it.
um, anyways, I like the instant gratification that it's published. You know,
Right.
per
Yeah.
chapter that it's out,
Yep.
and because at this point I'm backlogged.
Okay.
I just recently published a book that has been put aside. My father's been sick for a while.
Okay.
So prior to that, it just sat. It sat and it sat and it sat and it sat.
Yeah.
And I just now published it, the beginning part of this year. I think it was the beginning part of this year.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the exact
Yeah.
date.
Well, you have to be in the right headspace, and coming from where you were, there was
Yeah.
no headspace. There was no RAM left on your head computer. You needed
No.
some stuff to clear out for it to start spinning again.
Yeah. It really is. It's hard. Caesar. Like I said, I have 4 dogs in here.
No worries.
one is one is having an issue. Um, anyways, but yeah, so I've just realized that I'm trying to clear away the stuff, and I really love the instant gratification of publishing the chapters out, and then you can get. Now I'm not a big name, so I don't get a lot of the feedback. Do you find that as soon as you publish, you get more feedback from from other writers, or do you find that you're um, stagnant on it, that you're not getting as much? How does that work out for you?
Well, I think part of that is a planning process. And it's funny that you say that because I just put out my newsletter today that said my biggest mistake
Ah,
is writing is that I have not made it. I can be very impulsive, and I whatever planning I thought I was doing, it probably wasn't as deep as it should be, which is probably why I wrote Always Falling Behind. Um,
mhm.
and so I realized that if I could collect an ARC reader group, an advanced reader copy group earlier on, then when my betas were done with it, I could do all of my edits, hand it over to them, give them enough time to read it instead of shoving it, 10 days before want them to write a review. Um, and get feedback from them so that if I need to make any changes, I can. And then on the day of release, in a couple days afterwards, now I have 20 or 30 reviews ready to go.
Nice, nice.
That's
Now how long have you been writing, Beth?
3 years.
3 years? Okay.
It only took me 3 years to figure that out. So,
You're way ahead of me.
well, based on what we talked about before, is that it's one thing to learn your craft. And I've
Mhm.
been learning that actually a friend of mine just said that to me. He said, I can really see the growth in your writing. And I'm like, oh, that's like the best
Mm,
compliment to an author. But I had a lot of business acumen beforehand. I just needed to figure out how the publishing world works and how the authoring world works and how all this social media garbage, works, and they change the algorithm every other day and sometimes twice a day. And then, then you get hit with a hacker and it's like you never stop learning. And I do
Mm,
love to learn. So good, bad, or indifferent, um, it's a process. And it's
right.
not ever one that you can, I feel anyway, as an author, that you can ever put enough point on what we're doing. There's
Right.
always room for growth. There's always things to talk about. What do they say? There's only 12 topics about, in any fiction book, and it's our job to find a new way to spin it.
I agree with that.
So
Um,
there's 300,000 writers, authors out there or 500. Well, there's about 150,000 romance writers, and we're all spinning. We're all like on the wheel, spinning, spinning, spinning.
I get that. I wanted to put in here. I was trying to figure out real quick, but when you try to do anything real quick while you're doing something else, you're never going to do it.
Nope, you jam the other thing. You jam the other thing.
I know it. I was trying to think when my first book was published to give you a kind of an idea.
What is your genre?
Um, I'm a little all over the place. I do a
Okay.
lot of it's all fiction, but
Okay.
I have a couple I have two books in science fiction. I have supernatural
Are you
there's a lot of heat.
paranormal?
There's a Yeah, paranormal.
Hmm.
There's action adventure. I do some romance. I drift. Whatever my okay, I'm kind of like the dogs that I have. They see a squirrel.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm all over the book. I do have a series, and I went back, and it's a continuation. My husband gave me a lot of slack these last couple years, and he said, "You really need to finish a series." And
Yeah.
I'm like, because I've written quite a few books. Like I said, 15 published so far. I think it's 15. I'd have to actually take a complete count, but I think it's 15.
It's tremendous.
And thank you. But the problem is that my mind wanders. Like,
Mm.
um, the last
You get
time, now
bored?
this one has been, I'm sorry.
Do you get bored?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Um, the thing is what happens is when I'm writing, this is really bad. This is why I don't, are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a planter.
A- that sounds like two words put together.
That's because the first book I was a pantser. And then I
Mm,
realized, okay, that's fine when you have like three or four people in a story, but if you start adding in like, in the perfect lessons, I've got a hero and a heroine, both of their families, teachers and students. So now I write dossiers. I have all the
mm.
people, and then as I'm thinking about, what their descriptors are, I'm like adding that in. So when I'm 18 chapters into the book and I'm like, what color did I say his eyes were? Does his hair
Yeah.
fall over his forehead? I can't
Uh-huh.
remember. You know, and
Yeah.
then I can go back and look it up real quickly without having to read the whole story again.
Now, see, I do that. I do have, but I do it as I'm writing.
Me
So
too.
oh, sweet, we have that in common. I
Yeah,
have two documents on the side, okay, or three if it comes in a prior book, okay.
sure.
If I have a prior book, then I'm going with it. I'll have the last few chapters, so I know exactly where to go from that right into the
Yes.
next book.
Yes.
And so
Hmm.
I'll have, and typically I have about three computers on my table because I used to do it all. I know, don't judge me.
No, 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 because I have my laptop, which is connected to a monitor. So I get that. I get it. I do.
Well, and I don't just have one room, one space that way. In my This is going to be a long podcast. I'm going to be editing tonight.
We're just
Okay,
gonna have to meet
anyways,
halfway and have some coffee.
maybe, right? Excuse me. So basically in here in the sound booth, I have three screens. And
Sure.
on my desk on the other side of this wall, again, I have three screens. They are a big tablet connected to uh, a keyboard, and then I have another tablet, and then I have a huge screen. And then in the house, I have another space that I call it's my front porch, but it's all in pink. I can also run a podcast from there too because I
Mhm.
have it set up
Nice.
as such. Thank you. I
If
have
you're
way too
listening to
much time.
this podcast, this is the house to hit with all the technology.
Well, well, even when you were talking about your voice, I tweak my voice too. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't know that, but my voice, I actually tweak it. I have some sound systems on this one and my other system,
Hmm.
and it makes my voice a little bit deeper. And the reason I did that is when I do audibles, and I did it for the podcast as well,
Yeah.
because I wanted consistency so that if
Sure.
you hear me on the podcast, you know what my books sound like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, if I've tweaked my voice a little bit, so it's just a little, it's very tongue-tied. The software that I have, you go at your lowest, it tracks your voice at every level, so
Are
it
you
keeps
using
me at my.
Audacity?
No, I do have
Okay.
Audacity to edit after I'm done.
Got it.
This
Okay.
is actually uses my mic while you're talking to me. This
Neato.
is this is voice mod is what
Nice.
I use. And
Nice.
it keeps me, you record your voice when you first get the software, and then you go do your level. You can do
Right.
that, and it also has where you can change your voice. I can make myself sound like a man right now if you really
Oh,
wanted
for
to hear
sure.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you want to hear it? Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's see what I got here. Hmm.
But you were
Mm.
just speaking to me in your regular speaking voice, right?
No, this is actually this is my voice, but it's in a deeper key. Like,
Okay. I
this
was going to
keeps
say
me like.
because you
Go ahead.
you should have a little bit higher speaking voice so that
Oh,
you
I
don't
do.
torque your vocal cords.
Well, and this is the thing. This is voice mod, so this actually keeps me in a lower key. And
Yeah, yeah.
the reason I do that is my voice is very pitchy outside of voice mod. It goes up and
Hmm.
down. But the reason if I keep it at this voice level, if I do a man, I can really do a man. And this
Yes,
isn't editing, but
yes.
you see what I'm saying? That's just
I
my
do.
key. And
It's
if I want to
fancy.
do a girl, I can sound more like a girl this way, see?
Yeah, I do. That's phenomenal. I
And
love
that's
that.
that's just me talking. Now, voice mod also has programs that it'll deepen you and do it. I don't usually do those. I usually keep the one setting because what I did is when I installed the program, I had it record my voice and I went
Yeah.
to my lowest key and
Oh, wow.
just a slight up of my lowest key is where I'm at right now through this, and I
Right.
just keep it. So when I'm reading my books on like when I'm recording them. So I
Yeah.
if I go lower, there's a significant difference. Could you hear that when I was doing
Yep.
it?
Uh-huh.
That's why I do it. People always say when they listen to me, they're like, "That's not your voice." It is. If you listen to
Mhm.
me and you actually sat down and listened to me regular talk, it is my lowest key in my register that this keeps me at.
Wow.
And then, yeah, I think because I noticed when I started recording. Boy, we're really getting on a tangent here.
Well, no, this is fun. But
Oh,
no,
okay.
I mean it's all relevant. It's all relevant to,
Hmm.
to what we do. But
Yes.
we would call your for those who don't know about anything about voices, we would call you a lyrical voice because
Mm.
you have a range and you're up and I'm the same way, up and down when you talk
Yes.
and but then the
Eh,
we'll call them the normal people. The people who don't
yeah.
understand what actually all the frequency stuff, what's happening is that when you're in a book and you're entrenched, you don't want to
Hmm.
be pulled out of that by,
Yes.
your voice
Yes.
popping or a mouth sound, or you're a
Hmm.
deep breather or any of
Right.
these things. So yeah, these are all of the things that go into audio production.
And I like speaking with you because I'm not very clerical on the terminology, and you
Yeah.
are since you've studied it. So when I'm telling you why I do
Yes.
voice mod to keep me
Yeah.
in one key, you
Yeah.
understand.
I
Because
get it.
when I go to do the audible, if I want to, oh my gosh, and you do that dramatic tone, you see what I
Sure.
mean? It is a
Yeah.
dramatic tone in comparison to where it keeps me at one level.
Right. Well, see, that's
So,
what compression does. It
mhm.
keeps you in within the guardrail so you don't.
You're
freak
right.
anybody out.
Right. So that's what I
Okay.
use. Now, like I said, voice mod does have settings. Now, I don't use those because of copyright, you know what I mean? So I only
Yeah,
use my
yeah.
own voice. So,
Sure,
but it
sure.
does have, it's more of a gaming, you know what I mean? That you can change
Okay,
your
sure.
voice and play with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I use my own. That's why I recorded myself and only went to my register and
Sure.
then kept me up that level. So that way, when I do go up or down, it's a significant difference. And
Sure.
trust me, because I just kept recording book after book after book, and I was like, gosh, why don't I like this? And
Ah,
it took me a while to realize why I didn't. And don't get me wrong, I have 2 books published now, and I still want to do better than them. You know what I mean? Like
well,
that. It.
that's the age-old question for an author is,
Mhm.
when somebody says, "Well, what's your favorite book that you wrote?" And you're like, "Well, I haven't written it yet."
Yeah. Well, okay. So when we were talking about the published date, I wrote my first book in 2014. And
Wow. Yeah.
technically, that is the reprint. Technically, I wrote it in, let me make sure.
So yeah, so you've been jamming out at
2000,
least one a year.
right. The reproduction of it was in 2014, and the original was in 2011. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had a drop off period. I have quite a few books I didn't finish. I think I had 7 books total that I did not finish. I'm up to 5 now that I've got to
Okay.
finish, where I just got like halfway and stopped. Like,
I understand that. I
yeah.
could, so again, I'm taking over your podcast. Okay, so there's something
No,
I
it's
really want to
fine.
talk
Hey,
to
it's
you
all
about.
about me. I'm good for now.
Okay, so I
Sounds so
have this
conceited.
very, very strange phenomenon that happens to me when I get down to like the last 2 or 3 chapters.
Mm.
If I feel like I start off like I'm a sprinter, because I usually am a sprinter with everything that I do. And
Hmm.
then I get into this, I get into a groove, and then I feel like a marathon runner. And then I get to the last 3 chapters or so, and I feel like sludge. I don't
Mm.
know what happens. And I've been trying to, I mean, this has happened, not the first book, like, but the next 5 books after that. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And the only thing I can come up with, and I'd love your feedback on this, is that I don't want to say goodbye to my characters and the story. I feel like my
Mm.
friends are leaving me.
I,
Only thing I can
that
come up with.
Well, it's not quite that way for me. My thing is that this is what okay, when I asked you if you were a pantser or a plotter,
Yeah.
um, I I start out with a premise,
Mhm.
how I want the initial storyline to go.
Sure.
But as far as
That makes sense.
characters and things that happen, that comes as the book goes along. And
Okay.
the reason it does, now don't get me wrong, I copy and paste and I have another document so that each character builds as I'm doing the story.
As it
And that
should.
way yeah. So I always have a document of my original characters and I would
Mhm.
copy and paste and I just
Yeah.
plop them in. It might not be to sentence format for some people, but I can
No,
follow
no,
it,
no.
as far as my guidelines.
That's the
And
only
then
person who needs to.
right, exactly. Just to give me a generalization about what I'm working with as far as what my
Sure.
characters look like, their background, and etc. But that comes as I write the book.
Right.
And the reason it does is because I find it exciting. Like,
It
it's like
is.
I'm reading the book for the first time. And once I get to a point where I know where I'm going to end this book, I lose interest. And I haven't
Wow.
finished writing it. But when I have it in my head about how this story is going to finish, I
Yeah.
can't finish it. That's where I stagnate. And
Yeah, I feel
yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah. And then,
Well,
of course, I also like I said, I'm behind because my father got sick, and uh, it took over
yeah,
our
it's not
world for a
yeah.
while for the last few
You're
years.
you're excused from all of that. It's okay. It's okay.
Thank you, teacher.
You have my permission. Isn't that nice? You
Awesome.
came on here to get my permission.
All right, cool. Now to gear this back to you, because I'm sounding like a real ego thing over here for myself. Let's gear this back to you. And
Okay.
can we talk about Now, I know you mentioned your communications, but
Yeah.
tell me how and I believe you called it organization communication, because I did write that down when you said it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so tell me how that has inspired your writing. How does it help with the writing? I know that there's some way that it can help with your social media, yes?
Um, yeah, yeah, to a degree. So organizational communication in brief is understanding how information is passed upwards in an organization and downward in an organization. It has a lot to do with small group dynamics, how leaders emerge in a group. So, like, imagine any place you've ever worked and you're
Mm-hmm.
thrown into a group, and whether you like the people or not, you have to find a way to work with them. And nobody wants to be the instant leader, but yet we need an instant leader and somebody who steps up and is a narcissist, and you're like, we don't want you
Mm-hmm.
being the leader, and they're like, but I'm the
Mm-hmm.
best one, and you're like, you think you are. And so understanding that the psychology behind communication and understanding, one of the best analogies I ever got was in a small groups class called small groups communication, is that if in one hand you have your life baggage, who you
Mm.
are, what you've done, what happened to you, why you have it, you have your cultural baggage, stuff that is like in your DNA and you don't know how it got there, but it is. And then the other person has theirs in the right hand, has theirs. And so if when I'm trying to have discourse, I need to, if I'm giving you a piece of information, here's just a stupid example, is go clean your room. And you're like, okay, that's pretty easy, okay? And but then you go, like, say if you tell a kid or a friend, you go into their room and there's still garbage everywhere, and you're like, what did you clean? You're like, well, I pulled the sheets up on my bed and I put my slippers in the closet. Okay, that is not what I said. I said, go clean your room. You heard me say, I tidy up your room.
Yeah, it's your interpretation.
Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is where I think there are oodles and oodles of stories to tell. And quite often,
Right.
especially in romance, this is where the twist comes is, you know, you said you didn't love me. And you're like, no, I said I didn't love how you acted in this situation. And you're like,
Mm.
but what I heard was you said you didn't love me. And I'm like, no, it's not what I said. And so
Right.
this is where that miscommunication, happens. And when you're fully communicating, you're not only listening, but you're hearing what's being said or done
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
appreciating that, and then still not canceling them in your life. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So when you use that in your sense of your writing,
Hmm.
how do you break that down? I mean, does it come for each storyline, each conversation? Does it have just a broad overview of how you're going to direct the storyline? Tell me how that works for you.
Um, okay, so I'm going to go to Always Falling Behind, which is my latest release.
Hmm.
Again, this series is about, it's called The Dazed and Confused Steamy Romance, because they're all neurodivergent. So the
Okay.
Abigail has ADHD and anxiety. And if you know of anyone or yourself is ADHD and has anxiety, you know full well what I'm going to say is that one, they procrastinate,
Hmm.
and it's a way of life. And that in this case, Abigail, what I decided to do is I needed to show the reader what's going on in her mind and why she feels validated on what she's thinking versus what anyone else who doesn't have this disposition might not see. So kind of laying that out at the beginning, uh, like the first half of the first chapter, is that Abigail always has a plan, but it looks like Swiss cheese.
Mm.
And if it's like, where did you come up with this plan? So she gets a call out of the blue. She's 24 years old. She's living in Chicago with her friend and working at her dad's grocery store. She gets a call out of the blue from a solicitor, a lawyer, who told her that she is the last living person in her family line, and there is family inheritance that was established back in 1832 that she gets to claim, except she has to go from Chicago to Mystic, Connecticut to go and get it. And she's like, uh, I don't even know where to start with that. I have no clue where to start with that. So what does she do? She procrastinates, because when you don't know how to deal with anything, that's what we do. And
Mm.
because ADHD is it is a it is on the autism spectrum, but then there's different kinds and what have you. But the bottom line is that you're lacking executive functioning, not just remembering numbers, but just think of like being on a tennis court where somebody's, volleying back and forth with you, and you
Mhm.
can do that. You can do that all day long, but then you put a tennis ball machine on the other side, the kind that serves to you, and it comes
Mhm.
at you in rapid fire. With somebody who has ADHD, that's a perfect example of how they have to deal with every single day, all day. And so they're exhausted by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And everybody else is like, well, I don't have time to take a nap and blah, blah, blah. And so they blow it off and they call you lazy. And she's like, I'm not lazy. I work really, really hard. And
Mm.
so it's important for communication wise, to kind of tie this back, is that the reader has to understand how someone with an ADHD brain works.
Right.
And in order for her to have ever to acquire or be successful in her own mind, is she needs to understand that, and she might need medication to help her, but more importantly, she needs a village, whether it be one or two people or more, who don't judge her for who she is, and
Right.
therefore they can they can keep her within the rails, if you will, and still let her be creative and dream and still feel successful. And I think as communicators we need to do that, and in my writing I think it's very important to, at least if in the first three chapters, once all the characters have been established, that the reader know and have some sort of insight as to the way this person thinks, the way they behave, their verbiage, all of their little intricacies and quirks and stuff like that. And then you can play upon that. And then you can show the growth of it becoming lesser or more, whatever the case may be. And
Mhm.
by the end of the book, there's some sort of resolution to the predicament or the condition. Or the condition never changes, but the person's understanding of it and acceptance of who they are is ultimately the most important part, because without that, they can't love, they can't be loved. So
Right.
it's heavy, man. It's very
That
heavy.
it is. It's a lot, but then so is crafting characters. I mean, basically, you're pulling a human being out of your mind. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well,
so let's go.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say is I'm a very spiritual person, and quite often I feel like I'm just dictating. It's just kind of like transfers through me into my fingers, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the perfect word. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought of that word, but there it is. And
Right.
I'm always so grateful when that happens.
Oh, I feel you. I feel
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So tell me about, because I do believe that this got published. Let me make sure I get the date correct. Was it October 15th?
Always
Um,
falling behind.
yeah. Well, you also have one, Eight Crazy One Night
Oh,
Stands,
yes, yes, yes. This is releasing November 6th. This is such a
November
hoot.
6th. Okay.
It's called Eight Crazy One Night Stands. It is a steamy Hanukkah story, but you don't need to be Jewish to read the book. I have all of the Jewish or Yiddish words at the end of each chapter, so you know what's going on. Um, and
Now, wait a minute.
so
Are you Jewish as well?
I am.
Awesome.
So are we
That's
soul
really cool. I
sisters?
well, I'm not Jewish, but I love it.
Yeah. So
I'm not blessed into any particular religion per se.
that's fine. That is
Yeah.
fine. Um,
Not that I don't
but
believe in all the above. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not.
you know, we're all the same people.
Yeah,
Um,
we are. I don't
we
judge.
are. No. So, I have this friend. So, okay, more information about that. I am a mother of multiples. I have
Okay.
twins.
Okay.
And when my children were very young, I joined a mother of multiples group. And I
Hmm.
am still friends with some of these women. And now all of our kids are like, 23, 24, 25. And so now we're all commiserating about what's going on in life. And this one particular woman, um, had one child and then a year later had a second child and they were going to have a third child and then she had spontaneous triplets.
Oh,
And
wow.
so um her marriage did not work out. But so for the last, 15 years she's been telling us about all of these crazy dates that she goes on. And there is one guy in this story and it's kind of like a Where's Waldo. I really want my readers to figure out which one of these dates is like the absolute truth. It's hilarious. So the premise of the story is Becca is a 32-year-old independent patent attorney, and she all she wants to do is make a partner. And she's on the cusp of that happening, and she's just been killing herself for these three partners, to get on the wall. That's like the lawyer thing to do. And she has a meddling mother who is a socialite, and it takes place in the Detroit area. And her mother has this annual charity Hanukkah party. Let's use the right words. And so she invites all these dignitaries and everything like that. And Becca keeps showing up every year without a date. And it makes this is from her mother's point of view, Marilyn's point of view.
Hmm.
You're making me look bad, darling. You have to show up with the right looking person and you need to find a man to be with. And so the book starts off with Becca and the family at Thanksgiving, um, being hawked, and hawked means, pushed and pulled and given a hard time,
Hmm.
about why the fact that she hasn't gotten married yet. Why hasn't she found a guy? So she inadvertently makes a deal with her mother to date 8 men in 8 days. It's kind of like power dating, but on different days. And so you get to meet all of these men. This was fun. I worked with my son on coming up with the names of each of these guys and what their
Uh-huh.
jobs were, and it was just hilarious.
Wow.
And so Beck is going through all of these, and meanwhile, she has a friend who she grew up with who's kind of like her sounding board, and she's like, sometimes I think like he wants to be a part of this dating fiasco. And but she uses phrases like, I have to turn this carousel of men around in 1 week.
Mm.
Um and I probably shouldn't say this on your show, but she has a friend's code of conduct and friends shouldn't do some things to their friends. And um and she's just the circumstances, they just make me laugh all one after another. And so by the end of the book we have to figure out, does Becca make it to the wall? Does she get the wall? um does she What guy does she end up taking to the party? Here's another, apparently there's something in my life talking about boundaries, setting
Mm.
boundaries with her mother. um and that every time you set a boundary you can sometimes jeopardize a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
we all kind of went through that with the pandemic, but it's like,
Oh, yeah.
family's a tricky wicket.
Yeah. Actually, I would look forward to this book.
Oh,
Um,
you'd be laughing. It's so
I
funny.
I think a couple of reasons. did you ever watch Sex in the City?
Yes.
Okay, and you remember Charlotte when she changes to Judaism?
Yes.
Yeah, and I got a sense for that. And this you might not, I don't know. There are some aspects I like of the woman, Jill Zarin. There's something. Do you know who that is? The
The name sounds
Housewives.
familiar. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was a housewife of the New York City one, the New York. And her name is Jill Zarin, and
Okay.
she's still on Facebook, and I have her on there. There's a lot of aspects I'm not crazy about, but one thing that I always liked about her, she is Jewish,
Hmm.
and what I loved about her is, and also I got this, like I said, from the Sex and the City. This is my big reference for Jewish women. I don't know
That's
if
right.
that's good or bad. You take it,
Take it with a
but
grain of
look,
salt.
yeah, take it with a grain. Look, Jill Zarin up, and then you reach out to me. You say you're totally wrong or totally right. What
Yeah.
I like about it is their aspects of fixing their children up and
Oh,
their whole mannerism with their children,
okay. Okay.
as far as Jewish mothers. And I really loved that aspect. I mean, I'm not even looking at it for religion part. I'm just looking at like the culture itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
what I really appreciated it is the
Well,
whole fact about how just how they treated, you know what I mean? Their
right.
children and embraced them into the family and stuff. I don't know. I liked it. You know what I
But
mean? I don't care.
there's like I said, we have all sorts of cultural stuff that has happened in our life.
Oh
Um,
yes.
and so it gets a little, we have all of that, we all came from, well, not all of us, but Eastern European, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
life.
Right.
And we lived in little shtetls, which are like villages. But the book starts off with this first, the first paragraph is this. There was a need for all Jewish mothers to control their children from the moment of their
Mm.
first breath to their final one. The joy they must feel when they insert themselves into our very first relationships had to give them a surreal power that they could massage, mold, or in my case, manipulate my life to bend to their will. So, right there, it kind of sets the tone for
Yeah,
what's going
but
to
you know
happen.
what? It doesn't seem. I mean, granted, this is generalization.
Yeah,
Everyone's different. Even if you're in the same religion, that doesn't mean every person's going to take it the same way. But
right,
the
right.
generalization I got about how, you know what I mean? They motivate. I liked. I just liked.
Yeah,
I liked how I saw it in Sex and the City, and I liked it how I
great.
saw it as far as Jill Zarin. Her, of course, you only see certain aspects of
Right,
characters or
right.
in the books. I'm
Sure.
not, you know what I mean? Like I said, every person's different, but I
Right,
liked
right.
it. I liked that close knit stuff. But,
It
again,
is.
you just,
It is.
I
Well,
do, and I like it. It's close knit. Yeah, I'm sure if I had some kids of Jewish mothers, they might have their own take. You know what I mean? Or it might be a
yes.
positive, more positive.
But
Yeah.
this is not so indicative of every Jewish mother.
No.
My mother was not like
No.
this at all. Um,
Right.
but it's a stereotype that
Yes. Yeah. But I
most
like it though.
readers. Well,
But I
I
like it
thank
though.
you, thank you. I
I
appreciate that.
just
I mean,
do.
when you watch a movie and there's a Jewish mother, that opening statement is like what
Yeah.
you would expect. Yeah.
They're kind of like this. Yeah, this is how I see it, okay? It's like the strong mother that's trying to gear her child. But if her child really said, "Mom, I don't want this," they'd be like, "All right, but you would like it if you tried it."
That's right.
that's how that's how I see
Now
this. You
eat
know
your
what I mean?
spinach. Yeah,
Yes, go eat
that's
your
what
spinach then if you
they
don't want to
should.
do it. Just looking out for you. Get on gear here.
Exactly, exactly.
I just like it. I don't know. There's just something about it. It really draws me in. But when you
There's
talk,
yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, no, you ahead.
No, No, go ahead. Is there
You
something
go ahead.
about it draws me in? As soon as I heard you say that, I'm like, oh, and she is Jewish. I solely want this book. I love
Fantastic.
multicultural stuff. I do. I If you tell me that you're different than anything that I've got in my own life, I want it.
Okay. Then it's
I just
yours.
do. Yeah,
Well
I
then,
really like stuff like that. I really love South Korea too. Like
oh,
when
interesting.
I talk, yeah, when I watch the dramas on TV, I
Oh,
love. I love not every day, but I get into this thing and I get on a tangent and I will nothing watch but the dramas. Have you ever seen them on Netflix? The Korean dramas?
I have not spent time with that because I don't watch a ton of TV at this point. Are you
Well, I,
hooked?
I I
You're
get you
hooked.
too because I'm right now I'm hooked on audibles again. So it just depends on my mode because I can do stuff and clean the house and
There you
listen to a
go.
book at the same time.
Right,
But I
right.
get in sometimes where I like late at night if I'm up by myself, I love to watch the dramas because they're like
Oh yeah.
several episodes and you just watch them and they're
Yeah.
very close knit. A lot of families live in the same house. And
Yeah. I mean, it's stifling, but yet it's good at the same time.
yeah, it is. I mean, I can see the drawback. I mean, my mother lives across the pool from me,
The
so
pool. Right?
excuse me.
That's okay. Yeah, well, the other thing about this, and I don't spend a lot of time with this character, Becca, and her dad, but you do see how important it is to have the antithesis of such a strong mother. She has a strong father, and she had to learn, to wait until he was, done talking on the phone, or he would make you wait longer. He
Hmm.
was kind of a hard ass in that way, but whenever her mother was out of control, she turned to her dad. And the
Yeah,
dad is like, yeah, yeah, yeah. We let your mother, on a very long leash, but every so often, essentially, and I'm using this very flippantly, so don't send me hate mail. He gives her a little yank and pulls her back into line. Don't worry about
yeah,
that, honey. I'll take care of that with your mother. You can come alone. You don't have to bring anybody, that kind of a thing.
yeah.
So, there's a line where she's telling the date that she finally chooses, she says, yeah, this when my mom is getting ready for this party, we let her be as obnoxious as she wants, and then when it's done, we kind of release the kraken out into the wild, and then we have to reel her back in and put her back in her cave. So you
Right,
know how yeah, so
right. I get that. I'm
yeah,
excited. When it comes out, will you message me? Because
absolutely,
I would love to
absolutely,
get my hands on it. I mean,
you
seriously,
got
I'm
it.
not joking. I want it. And I'm not saying you
you
have to give it to me free or anything like that. Just give me a link.
I will give you a link.
Give me a
I will give you the
direction.
link. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Well, you're
Thank you so
welcome.
much for
So,
that.
as I get ready to say goodbye to you, I don't want to because I've really enjoyed the conversation, but we're already over an hour and I'm going to be editing tonight.
Sorry.
That's all
Take
right.
the
It's
power
all
out
right.
about the Kraken.
That's all right. Really, the edit isn't that long. It's just the longer that I have to put it with the video as well. So it just takes
Yeah,
me a
yeah.
bit the longer it is. Um, so what is next for you? Because we're coming to the end. We're going into the holiday
Oh,
season, and I know you've
yeah.
got some things on your website, some planner things that are coming up. But what do you
Yes.
have as far as your next book? What is on the books for the end of this year or coming into the next? Now, I know we
Into
just
the
talked about the book
spring.
coming in November. Right.
Yes. So
Okay.
the second book in my Dazed and Confused Steamy Romance Neurodivergent series, this one is called, the first one was Always Falling Behind. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking the next one's going to be called Never Getting Ahead. And that
Ooh.
is about Abigail's friend Seneca, who, by the way, that's the name of the street I lived on when I was very young. But Seneca is also, is a character. She is half American Indian from the Iroquois tribe, and
Mm.
and also half white. And so in the first book, you see Seneca's connection to the earth because she's planting gardens for Abigail at her new mansion home. And and Abigail, I can't tell you the end of the story, but Abigail and Seneca figure out a way, and then um, that that Seneca can go and become a horticulturalist.
Hmm.
And so Seneca, though, she has OCD, so that's obsessive compulsive disorder for those who don't know all the initials. And she also has a little bit of depression, which
Mm.
also is kind of a cultural thing that has happened in the indigenous, tribes. There's a lot of that, and for rightfully so. And so she, it's very funny. I have it all kind of plotted out, like you said. And when I say all plotted out, I mean like four things plotted out. But and all the rest of it will weave its way into it because there were so many parts about the first book that I had no idea was going to come out, but it did. So
Right.
that's going to be the next book. And so me and Seneca are going to get into it. I have some calls set up with the Iroquois Nation
Oh,
so that I represent well. I absolutely have to do my research. I don't want to offend anyone. I want
no,
to
I
speak
I get
intelligently.
you. I totally get you on that because I'm writing a book about Yaqui Indians and
Oh,
Laura. I'm gonna call you out. Laura is actually a Yaqui.
are you?
Yeah,
What part of the
she
country
is.
is that from?
She is in Arizona. You still awake over there,
Oh,
Laura? Typing the screen.
I know. Put her right to bed.
There she is. She says
She's like,
yes, she's
wrap
awake.
it up, wrap it up.
Wrap- yes, she and I actually started writing the book because of her. In fact, I didn't even know she was Yaki. We just had a conversation and it
No.
brief and I was like, "What?"
Okay. We have a
What?
word for that. There is a Yiddish
Yeah.
word for that. It's
Yeah.
called beshert.
And I love
Bershert, which means made in heaven.
Yeah, I love multicultural. I
Yeah.
love having something different. I mean, I'm just in Ohio in farm country here. You know what I'm saying? I'm like a little hermit back in I run this little podcast out of my little thing here.
That's right.
and, and so when I hear somebody of difference, this is why I just love it because it just gives you a whole other different look to the world,
It is. It is.
and to dig a little deeper into the stuff. And Laura and I have an interesting talks, and the things she tells me, I'm just swept into it. I mean, if I could put her on the phone 24/7, I would never be bored. I
Take
wouldn't.
her intravenously.
I know, just suck her dry. She's like, I quit.
Check, please. Gotta go.
Check, please. It was brilliant having you on, Beth.
This
We've
has
we've
been
talked
so
for
much fun.
it has, and I've really enjoyed myself. You'll have to come back. We can have lots of different conversations.
Love to.
I would love to have you back. I mean, even like I said, we don't just have to talk about books. We can make a list of things we'd like to talk about. I mean, I could pick your brain. We could talk Yiddish. You could tell me what that
Oh,
means.
oh, you can be a Yiddish.
Yeah, we could really get digging in deep. I mean, and we have some similar political things. We could talk
Yep,
about that. I really just enjoyed
sure.
having the conversation. So if
This
you're
has been
game,
great.
I've enjoyed it. So if you're game, hook up with me. I've
I will
got
do
to
that.
push ahead. I've stagnated a little bit on the podcast because of past weeks, but
That's
I'm
okay.
trying to push ahead, and to make yourself feel busy
Mhm.
always makes me feel better. So that's what
You
we're going
got it.
to
Well, I've lost my father 13 years ago, so I know what you're going through.
Yeah, it's just,
It's a
it's been a
lot.
lot. And then
It's a
my
lot.
sister a few weeks ago. So
That's too much. Too
it
much.
is. And
Yeah.
it is. But you know
So
what?
please be kind to yourself.
I'm trying. I'm
Yes.
trying, but
And
this was
cry
a
a lot
great
in the shower.
conversation. Yeah, this was a great conversation and I truly enjoyed it and it made
Oh,
me really
anytime.
it makes me want to do more of them. How about that? We'll give you that.
Aw, I love that. I love that.
All
Well,
right.
thank
Well, I
you
want to
again. You have a
well,
wonderful
thank you.
evening.
Well, thank you and you too.
Thanks.
Thank you Beth and thank you to our listeners. Until next time, guys.